Another day, another sewing project. Today it's a jumpsuit. Hi, I'm Megan. Welcome to my sewing space, and in today's video, I'm going to be sewing a jumpsuit. And the pattern that I'm using is the Valley jumpsuit from Peppermint Magazine's website, and I will link that down in the description for anybody who is interested in finding the same pattern. And the fabric that I'm using today is this one from my stash. I got this for free secondhand from one of my friends, and it's a medium to lightweight quilting cotton. I think it's really pretty. It has nice autumnal colors in it, but I think it's definitely one of those color combinations that even though it looks autumnal up close, you could definitely wear it year round. It says copyright Laura Wagner for Marcus Brothers Textiles Incorporated. I printed out my pattern. I need to tape it together and cut out my size. I was hoping to be able to do the whole thing in one day. It might end up being a multiple day project. Enough talking about it. As per usual, I talk too much about it before I get into it. Anyway, I'm losing daylight. Let's get cracking. Okay, the PDF pattern is printed, taped together, and cut out in my size. I wound up grading the pants piece between sizes because my hips are a few sizes bigger than my bust measurement. It took a lot longer than I anticipated. It took like a full 2 hours. So now I'm going to cut out my pattern pieces. I'm also cutting out some strips of bias binding and a couple rectangles of interfacing. I'm taking my pattern piece and I'm marking where the interfacing needs to go and then ironing that in place. And I'm folding over 1 centimeter and pressing in place. Then I'm folding over again where I've already marked and pressing in place again. And then I'm just top stitching to create that front button placket area. Now I'm picking out my 3 buttons, and I'm gonna go with these dark red ones. Using some chalk and the button template, I'm marking where I'm going to sew my buttonholes. I place my buttonhole foot onto my machine. I'm using number 35 for my buttonhole and sew my buttonholes where I've already marked. What I'm gonna do now is use a little bit of liquid stitch on the inside of my buttonholes that I just made before I cut the hole open. And I like to do that to help keep the buttonhole threads from unraveling. I'm gonna do that, let this dry, and I think I'm gonna call it a night. And I'm using a big yarn needle. You could also use a toothpick or a skewer or anything that you wanted to place the glue onto the stitches of the buttonhole. And then after it has dried, I use my seam ripper to very carefully open the buttonholes. I am ironing a little strip of interfacing on the back slit opening. I'm finishing the back center edges of the bodice pieces with my serger. And then with right sides together, I am pinning my back center edges together, and then I'm stopping right at the bottom of the back slit opening and sewing in place. Then I press that back seam open and then carefully press and pin the back slit opening so I can sew that in place. And when it's finished, it looks like this. a zigzag stitch at the bottom to help reinforce the seam. Leaving a centimeter or two of bias binding at either edge of the neckline, pin the binding in the neck right sides together, and then sew in place. Then trim down the seam allowance from the binding and then understitch the binding to the seam allowance. Iron the binding to the wrong side of the fabric, fold in the raw edges, and then fold the bias binding over again and pinning in place. This was really tricky and took a lot of pins. And then I'm busting out my heavy duty needle because there's now a lot of layers that I have to sew through. Then slowly and carefully stitch the binding closed at the neckline. And here is what that looks like. Next, I pin and sew my side seams. Then I use my scissors to clip the underarm curves, being careful that I don't accidentally clip through the stitching that I just did. And then I finish those edges with my serger. Next, I'm gonna sew on the back slit openings button, and then I'm making a little button loop out of my thread. And here's what that looks like, complete. Then I'm sewing on my 3 buttons to the front of the shirt. A quick try on. Next, I'm placing the right front tab on the top of the left front and aligning the 2 front lines, and then pinning and sewing about 10 centimeters to hold them in place. I'm ironing up my sleeve hems and sewing them in place. Time to work on the pockets. First thing I'm doing is serging to finish 3 of my 4 pocket edges. And then I'm folding the upper edge of my pocket down about 1/2 centimeter, wrong sides together, pressing, and then flipping over, and then folding right sides together, pressing again at about 1.5 centimeters. Then I'm stitching about 1 centimeter down on either side, trimming the corners and then folding them back to the right side, and then pressing my 3 other edges in nice and neat. And then after I top stitch the top of the pocket down, I have a couple markings here on my pants pieces. And then I line up the pocket between these 2 markings, pin, sew in place, and here's what a finished pocket is looking like. I pin the pants pieces together and I sew the front center and the back center of the pants together. And then I serge the front and back center seams. Press the seams to one side. Then I pin the front and back pieces at the inseam. Sew in place, and then serge to finish my edges. And then and give everything a good press again. And then the pants part of my jumpsuit is finished. Here's a quick little try on. And now we have to connect the bottom half of the jumpsuit to the bodice part of the jumpsuit. And we do this by stuffing the pants into the bodice, right sides together, lining everything up and pinning all the way around, and then stitching in place with about a 5 cm seam allowance. Next, I trim just the bodice seam allowance down to 1 centimeter. Then I press the pants seam allowance up and around, pin in place. And then sew in place, leaving an opening so that I can thread my elastic through. The pattern calls for 40mm elastic. I do not have 40mm elastic, but I do have 1.5 inch elastic, which is about 38mm. I'm wrapping the elastic around my waist to get a nice comfortable fit and cutting that to size. And then I thread that through the elastic opening, and then using a zigzag stitch, I sew that in place. Get it tucked back in the elastic casing, and then stitch this closed. The very last thing to do is hem the pant legs. Here it is, the finished jumpsuit. What do you guys think? Do I love how this jumpsuit turned out? Yes. Am I gonna wear it all the time? Also yes. I was very skeptical when I tried the bodice piece on and then tried the pants piece on as separates that I was gonna like this jumpsuit. But once everything was sewed together, it's wonderful. I love this jumpsuit. I'm gonna wear this all the time. I love the pockets, how flattering the thick elastic waistband is, the button placket and the keyhole opening in the back. I love that this jumpsuit is squat proofed, very easy to move around in, very comfortable. The only thing that I did notice is the way that the sleeves are. If I reach my hands up over my head, I get major wedgie. But I wonder if that's all jumpsuits or just this jumpsuit, because this is the first jumpsuit that I have ever worn. You know, maybe that just comes with the territory of wearing a jumpsuit. Arms over the head, super wedgie. Anyway, as always, thank you guys so much for watching, and I will see you in the next one. Bye!